morning, students. Now we are going to discuss about History Chapter 2, from hunting gathering to growing food. Chapter 2 of History deals with the earliest people who moved from place to place in search of food. Students, in our last class we discussed about many topics in detail, such as how we come to know about these people, how they start farming and herding, etc. Am I right? Now we are going to discuss about a changing environment. Students, around 12,000 years ago, there were major changes in the climate of the world, which led to the development of grasslands in many areas. Students, what do you mean by grasslands? Yes, an area covered with grass. This also led to an increase in the number of animals that survived on the grass. So, people start thinking about herding and rearing these animals. Do you know, farming developed as a result of the climate change of the world. Students, people observed plants and how they grow. Gradually, they also started growing crops. Fishing also became important for people. Students, what do you mean by fishing? Yes, the activity of catching fish. Moving on to understand farming and herding. Students, farming means the activity of growing crops. Herding means, yes, herding is the act of bringing individual animals together into a group, maintaining the group and moving the group from place to place. Students, with the development of grassland, people came to know about growing wheat, barley, rice in different parts of the subcontinent. This is how they started practicing farming. Students, people could also attack and then tame animals by leaving food for them near their shelters. The first animal to be tamed was the wild ancestor of the dog. Later, people encouraged animals that were relatively gentle to come near the camps where they lived. Students, these animals such as sheep, goat, cattle, and also the pig lived in herds, and most of them ate grass. That means animals such as sheep, goat, cattle, and also the pig lived in herds, the most of them ate grass. Often, people protected these animals from attacks by other wild animals. This is how they became herders. Can you tell which was the first animal to be tamed? Yes, the first animal to be tamed was the wild ancestor of the dog. Students, which animals were considered relatively gentle? Yes, sheep, goat, cattle, and pig were considered relatively gentle. Listen to it. Moving on to understand domestication. Students, domestication means the taming of animals for various purposes is referred to as domestication. Students, domestication is the name given to the process in which people grow plants and look after animals. Am I right? Very often, plants and animals that are tended by people become different from wild plants and animals. This is because people select plants and animals for domestication. What do you mean by domestication? Yes, the taming of animals for various purposes is referred to as domestication. Amongst animals, those that are relatively gentle are selected for breeding. As a result, gradually domesticated animals and plants become different from wild animals and plants. For example, the teeth and horns of wild animals are usually much larger than those of domesticated animals. Moving on to understand a new way of life. Students, in this concept, we will discuss about why do people who grow crops have to stay in the same place for a long time. Students, if you plant a seed, you will notice that it takes some time to grow. Am I right? This may be for several days, weeks, months, and in some cases, years. People had to stay in the same place for a long time, looking after the plants, watering, weeding, driving away animals and birds, till the grain ripened. And then the grain had to be used carefully. Then they start thinking of storing the grain for food and seeds. Students, mention the two purposes for which grains had to be stored. Yes, grains had to be stored for food and seed. Students, as grain had to be stored for both food and seed, isn't it? People had to think of ways of storing it. In many areas, they began making large clay pots or wove baskets or dug pits into the ground. Can you tell what did people do to store grains? Yes, people made large clay pots or wove baskets or dug pits into the ground. Students, animals multiply naturally. Animals were also stored since they can serve as a source of milk and also ready meat. So, animals were used as a store of food. Some sites have given evidence of farmers and herders. Remains of animal bones have been found. One of the most exciting finds includes remains of burnt grain. These may have been burned accidentally or on purpose. Students, scientists can identify these grains, and so we know that a number of crops were grown in different parts of the subcontinent. Let us discuss about pit house. Students, archaeologists have found traces of huts or houses at some sites. For example, in Barzahom, people built pit houses which were dug into the ground with steps leading into them. These may have provided shelter in cold weather. Students, we can find cooking huts both inside and outside the huts, which suggests that depending on the weather, people could cook food either indoors or outdoors. Students, what do you mean by huts? Yes, the floor of a fireplace. Students, many pit houses have been found at Barzahom. People used stone tools to dig circular pits into the ground. Then they plastered their sides with mud. These pits were usually narrow at the top and wide at the base. Students, do you know ash, charcoal, and pieces of pottery have been found in these pits? Some of the pits had ovens made of stone or clay. These ovens may have been used to cook food. Let us discuss about stone tools. Students, stone tools have been found from many sites. They are often different from the Paleolithic tools and are called Neolithic. These include tools that were polished to give a fine cutting edge, and mortars and pestles used for grinding grain and other plant produce. Students, mortars and pestles are used for grinding grain even today, several thousand years later. Students, name two Neolithic tools which are used to grind grain even today. Yes, mortars and pestles are Neolithic tools used even today for grinding grain. Students, many kinds of earthen pots have also been found. These were sometimes decorated and were used for storing things. People began using pots for cooking food, especially grains like rice, wheat, and lentils. Students, lentil mean a high protein pulse. Moving on to understand Mehrgarh. Mehrgarh is a site located in a fertile plain near the Bolan Pass, one of the most important routes into Iran. Students, Mehrgarh was one of the places where people learned to grow barley and wheat. and rear sheep and goats for the first time in this area. It is one of the earliest villages that we know about. At this site, many animal bones were found. Bones of wild animals such as the deer and pig, and also bones of sheep and goats were found. Students, do you know several burial sites have been found at Mehrgarh? Dead people were buried with goats, which were supposed to serve as food after death. Can you tell why were people buried with animals like goats? Yes, dead people were buried with goats, which were supposed to serve as food after death. Students, in Mehrgarh, most houses were square or rectangular. They usually had four or more compartments, some of which may have been used for storage. Students, what do you know about Mehrgarh? Yes, Mehrgarh was located in a fertile plain near the Bolan Pass. Here, people learned to grow barley and wheat. It is one of the earliest villages. In Mehrgarh, remains of houses have been found. They had four or more compartments. Several burial sites have been found in Mehrgarh. Students, in Mehrgarh, most houses were square or rectangular. Students, you know, dead people were buried with goats, which were supposed to serve as food after death. Thank you.